We move to Mrs. Deb Kearse.
Representative Cox, can you address the pension programs plaguing state and local budgets and your insights to solutions?
The pension concerns are no secret to anybody, whether it's the state pensions, whether it's the teachers' union pensions. It is a sword hanging over our heads by a very thin string. And as we move forward, we have got to go forward with solutions that will address how things are done. I personally, we're going to find a lot of agreement here tonight on some of these things, and perhaps more than one way, but one of the things we do have to do as a legislature is to help ensure that the local pensions and the local structures, we have to encourage consolidation of those larger pension programs. That is an idea that's been put out there. Unfortunately, there are large lobbying bodies that often occur with the townships and the boroughs, and they come at us and they say, we don't like this because it takes away our control of this or that. So there is some resistance there. I think the resistance is going to come down as time goes on and they find they don't have as many options. But there are proposals out there that would go about helping consolidate. On the larger level with the teachers' unions or the teachers' pensions and the state employee pensions, including legislative pensions, we have a structure that needs to be refined. We have a structure that needs to be changed. If we can move from a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan, that will be the way to go. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court decisions and some other things in place have really tied our hands there. We can make changes for employees coming in now, but as the existing employees, we can't make changes to those because of contractual obligations.
Deb, I agree that it's a serious crisis. We need to look at it. It reminded me of a story I learned or an incident that happened very early on in my Army days. I was in basic training, and I was assigned to be a squad leader. And one of the first things I had to do was lead my troops into the chow hall. And it was a rainy day, so we ran in, and I got in line for food. And I was the first one in line because no one else was in there, and I was ready to get some Army chow. And a drill sergeant took me by the collar and pinned me against the wall, and he pointed in my face and he said, "Leaders eat last." When it comes to this issue, there's a simple thing to start the debate, and that is there should be legislation that's been offered, which my opponent hasn't provided in the legislature, that first says we're going to change the pension system for legislators, because you can't effectively negotiate something unless you lead by example. So my first year, I'll offer a bill that says we're going to change our own pension system to make it a defined contribution plan, not a defined benefit plan. Then we have to tackle the problem. It's important for us to remember how we got here. And it's not to point fingers, but it's to understand the dilemma, which is that during the Ridge administration, we had political leaders, folks in Harrisburg, who really do not always have the answers, who turned to the school boards and said, hey, you folks you don't have to put all that money in the pension system. The economy's doing really well, just to hang off on it. And they failed to do that, and we have the crisis we're in now. We do need to tackle it. We're going to have to tackle it by remembering the promises we met to current people, but we're also going to have to come up with a new system for people coming in that's unfortunately going to be less advantageous as it is now. It's going to have to be, like Representative Cox said, a defined contribution plan.
Would you like to respond?
Yes, please. Mr. Saar came back around to exactly what I had said, which is we have to move to a defined contribution plan. He also answered the same way I did, which was to say we cannot, by law and by the court's decision, we cannot change existing legislators or existing state employees. We can change it for future employees and future legislators. I am a co-sponsor of those types of bills. When if Mr. Saar makes it to Harrisburg at some point, he's going to discover that you don't always have to introduce a bill to accomplish a goal, because very often than not, unless you're the first one standing in the office to file the bill, you very well may have somebody else file a similar idea before you. I had that happen several times. There are phenomenal ideas out there, and so by co-sponsoring those and working to push those through some of the committees, I've been able to advocate for some of these very things. I'm on the State Government Committee. That is a committee that deals with a lot of these reforms. I served on the Reform Commission that was defined by the Speaker back in 2007, and we made a lot of changes moving in this direction, and we set the tone for the types of reforms that we need.
You know, Mr. Cox highlighted some important challenges in Harrisburg, which I realize. I haven't run for office before or been in Harrisburg, but I know there's some big hurdles. One of the problems in Harrisburg is the fact that it's hard to get things done, like Mr. Cox just articulated, when you only work 60 or 70 days a year. So June 30th was the last day of the budget session for this legislature. Controlled, by the way, which you would think, Representative Cox with some seniority would have some push around there. Controlled by Republicans, they said, look, we're going to end on June 30th. The rest of this year, we're going to work 8 days. Then, recently, because there was a difficult bill, which my opponent voted against, to encourage the investigation of Governor Corbett's handling of the Sandusky case, they said, you know what, we don't need to work 8 days the rest of the year. Let's just work 6 because we don't want to take this tough vote on this Sandusky issue. The fact of the matter is we need to put Harrisburg to work. We need people who are going to stand up to party leadership, whether they're Republicans supporting Democrats or Democrats supporting Republicans, and say what's right is right and it's time to get to work in Harrisburg.